Welcome to Building Stories, the podcast where we tell honest and sometimes funny stories about construction and digital transformation. Very excited to have David Foley with us today. He's a Director of Digital Delivery and founder at IIMBE, which is one of the premier BIM consulting firms in Australia, working on many massive projects and advising state and government and really having a big influence on the industry. So excited to have you, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So your young years, mate, were there any hints you would be a builder or a maker or involved in this industry when you were growing up?
No, not really. I'm not really a practical guy as when it comes to building things with my hands or that. I've never been very good at it. A lot of my friends are good at that when I grew up, but thinking back on it, I wanted to be an architect when I was at school. I loved buildings, so I did art as a subject in England. Probably different curriculum ideas to here, but I did art, and some of my subjects, thinking about what to talk about here is I'd done a lot of buildings that were quite relevant to where I grew up, and I'd drawn them in pencil sketch and paint and lithographs and different things. And I was like, I always had a fascination with buildings. I've always loved them. I really liked them. And also I did a geography and art project based on Australia. And I did documentation about the Barrier Reef and paint and artwork about that and Uluru. At the time it was Ayers Rock. But so when you look back and reflect, it was always probably inevitable that I would end up here, but I didn't really know. And then I found out that you needed to spend a hell of a lot of time at university to become an architect. And Bill was not what I enjoyed doing. So my strongest subject was probably always maths and numbers. And there was a careers there, and there was a couple of jobs for electrical engineer, quantity surveyor, etc., etc. So 4 of us from the school went and applied. We did these psychometric tests, and I got a job interview. And there's 2 jobs. There was one as a quantity surveyor and one as electrical engineer. And I remember this quite clearly. I want to be a QS. I like working with numbers. I like saving money. I want to make sure buying ability and do this. And during the interview, the guy interviewing me said, "That's not what our QSs do. That's what our engineers do." I'm like, "Oh." And we talked about that for a while. And then I got offered an apprenticeship to become an electrical engineer. So in England in the early 90s, you didn't have to go to university. I did this interview and they said, "Look, this is what our electrical engineers do." Really excited. Anyway, they offered me a 4-year apprenticeship, which meant 1 day a week at school and then the rest of it working in an electrical mechanical construction company. I loved it. It was great. I was doing my engineering. I was doing okay at college. Really good at passing exams. Really terrible on writing assignments, and that's not changed. Writing reports and documents is not my forte. But it was all about the efficiency of how quickly you can get things installed, what's the quickest route, the shortest way, how do you save materials, what do you do. In my course to become an electrical engineer, you had to do drafting, right? So I had to learn to draft on the drawing board. So I did a full cycle through estimating, drafting, engineering, calcs, and doing quantity surveying. A really, really good apprenticeship. It's a shame they killed them off in the 90s due to they don't do them anymore. But I couldn't draw on a drawing board without smudging it, right? So even though I love art and I'm really good, the techniques on a board were really challenging. And I was 17 at the time, and I could do this free course on AutoCAD version 9 on DOS because I was underage, and all we had to do was pay for the exam. So the company did that, and I passed. And then the next year I did management and facilitation and setup and structure of AutoCAD. Did that, and while I was doing that course, the company moved from the drawing board to AutoCAD. So as they transitioned, I was heavily involved in that transformation because they're trying to learn how to use this software, being taught by resellers, and I've just done 2 courses at college for free. So
what year are we talking now when you're in DOS in AutoCAD? What was this?
92. I left school I was 15, just turning 16, and I started my apprenticeship then. So yes, a long, long time ago, but it was either that or go to university. But there was a massive recession on in the UK, and my parents were like, "Look, you can go do A levels, you can go to do university, but if you want to do this, it's a pretty good opportunity." All my school friends and all my good friends I grew up with all ended up in trades: electricians, plumbers, builders, joiners. So everyone was in it. I ended up in the office. So just a natural transition. And I found I enjoyed it. I've come to reflect that I'm a problem solver. See a problem, fix it where you go. So learning how to draw and coordinate cable trays, light fittings, layouts was part of the do, making sure you don't put too many in, you quantify them, you've got to save money. It was a really, really good thing. Anyway, I got made redundant. When I finished my apprenticeship, it was a deep recession. I got made redundant. And the turning point in my career, which is what you're sort of looking for, is I'd moved out to this massive project. There were 60 buildings, and the company was transitioning to AutoCAD. And I ended up teaching every one of the contract draftsmen that they brought in how to transition from the board. Now, I was a third-year apprentice at the time, and I spent 8 months doing it. And these contract draftsmen were highly paid compared to me. And I finished my apprenticeship, and they couldn't take me on. And the guy running the project and site was furious with the management because who was going to teach all these new draftsmen because they couldn't get enough, and he tried to hire me back, and he wasn't allowed to hire me back on half the rate that they paid the contract people due to the fact that I'd just been made redundant. But it was a big wake up call because I was like, I've now got no job. So it had a massive influence about what's important, how you keep your job, what you do. I was a typical 17, 18-year-old. I was just 20 when it happened. So I used to get to work every day. I'd get in on time, but I would do the bare minimum, right? I lived 5-minute walk from the office, walk to work, go home for lunch, make my lunch at home, go back. I lived that close. So I was always in on time, and I always left on time, whereas I think the other people would get there early due to traffic conditions and leave later. So the perception of the value you bring back then was you're not as committed. So I got let go, and I went contracting. I knew I'd taught loads of other contractors. I knew I could do the drafting. Knew what I was doing. And the biggest surprise is you walk out thinking you're no good and you can't do anything, and you walk into other companies and you sit with other people, and I was like, I'd learned so much in 4 years about the whole industry. The knowledge I'd got, they never emphasize that you know what you're doing. They're always pushing you to improve, so you didn't feel good. So I ended up doing that for a bit, and I got a job at a design consultancy, and I had a really good director there. He's like, do you want to move on and do a degree? You've got the qualifications, you've got the aptitude. I'm sort of sat there going, I'd love a degree, but I don't want to do more education. I don't like doing all the other stuff, the report writing. I'm good at exams, but report writing, I'm not good at it. So I'm sat having this career conversation with him. I'm like, so you're the director. Do you have a degree? And he's like, nope, I've got no qualifications either. I've got 40 years experience in the industry. And I said, so, well, do I need one? He's like, well, to get on, I think people in the future, you really are going to need to get a degree if you want to be successful and grow. I'm like, well, I look at you, you've done it. I reckon I can do it without it. I reckon experience will trump education. Not for the masses, but I'll take that hit. So I did that, worked there for a while. And then one of the contract guys that I taught a few years earlier set his own drafting business up. And he hired me to help run and develop and establish his business. So we did outsource drafting. We went to work in London for eight years, and we priced jobs, win jobs, deliver jobs, similar to the CAD bureaus that we have here. So I did that for quite a while and knew how to price, knew how to manage, knew how to do this. Earned good money in London, and then my wife got pregnant. I moved from London back up to Leeds. Massive salary difference when you move from London out. It's like moving from Sydney out to Orange. That they don't pay the same wages. So readjusting again, and we sat there, and someone rang me up that I'd worked with in London and said, would you like to come and work for me in Australia? So I spoke to my wife, and she's like, yep, let's go. So
wow.
We moved out all the way out here, again in deep recession time. '08, we got here just before the GFC. Didn't know it was coming. So glad we got here prior. So I always look back and say I've been very fortunate and lucky in my life. And we'll probably touch on that earlier, that a few people have pointed out that it's not all about luck. But yeah, we got here. I worked at NDY. They'd looked after me so well. I was on the New Children's Hospital in Melbourne, and we were documenting the design. And having come from the UK, we were building prefabricated modules of 2D documentation, and we'd moved into 3D modelling. And we'd been using Navisworks for coordination, and we got here, and I'm trying to draw and coordinate these services. NDY were using AutoCAD MEP, but the program and the process for looking at and coordinating, and having been brought up on site, I couldn't draw stuff that wouldn't work or model it. It just went against my grain. It's like, what's the point in putting an effort in if you know what you're documenting doesn't fit? So trying to bring my ethics and belief and meet deadlines and challenges, I looked for different workflows and different things. We didn't have Navisworks at the time, but there was a 3 AutoCAD DWIFX viewer that you could export out into models. And I'd started doing this, and I'm starting to show people that what we were designing was going to be struggled to be installed. And it sort of, the client liked it, the builder liked it, the engineers didn't. And I'm sort of sat there going, the idea was that it's going to take us longer to fix. And I'm like, but it's going to have to be fixed at some point. And the pressure wasn't because they didn't want to do it right. The pressure was that the deadline set meant that if we had to do it right, we wouldn't be able to meet the deadline. So the program impact of what people do changed the way people behave. And I think that what I like about what we do with BIM and technology is that we're supposed to try and reverse that, right? That we need to get this right. Yes, the program is right, but how right do you get it? How far do you go? What do you do? So I think when I look at my formative years to where we've ended up with IIMBE, I think the things that have happened have all accumulated to bring me to the place I should be. And I'm very, very pleased with my journey. And as I said, talking to people back in the UK, I've got a few little incidents. I was talking to a friend. I feel very fortunate. I've had good friends. I've been lucky in my career. And she pointed out to me that it's not just luck. If you treat people the way you do and you look after people right, you surround yourself with good people, and it comes back to you. So it's not luck. It's down to how you treat people, how you work, and what you do. It just feels very fortunate. And it takes a lot for someone to make me think that I'm part of my success. I'm quite humble, as the people that know me do. I'm not. But I do work hard, and I do want to do the right thing, and I do think that what we do should make a difference and make it better. We're not just selling services for the sake of it. I don't want to do something if there's no value or benefit in it. I don't even want to do something if it's inefficient. So the ethos of that and how you treat people, I think just helps you in this industry. It's a very tough industry. It's an awesome industry. There's a new problem every day on every site, but it's very tough.
And particularly as you're coming into a phase of transition for the industry. So like, I know you glossed over it pretty quickly, but like if you're going to come in and we're going to implement change here, we're going to change what we've been doing for the last 20, 30, 40 years and say, okay, no, we're not happy here. We're going to coordinate. We're going to get it right. And now we've got these tools and technologies that are going to enable that. You have to have this people aspect. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And I'm sure, like, yeah, you did gloss over it, but in those NDY days and that transition, there would have been a lot of pushing and pulling as that transition happened, right?
You're right, but I think I go back. I am very lucky that I started work at such a young age, pre-technology. When doing the documentation and drawings, you didn't put ink on paper till you knew it was right. It was just too much effort to change. AutoCAD helped change that you can fix your mistakes quickly and efficiently, which was awesome, right? So it didn't take you 2 days to redo the drawing because there'd been a design change or site or something you document didn't work. But what what that transition from the drawing board to the computer meant that changes were easy. So people actually stopped trying to get it all right and rushed to get it documented. So the technology actually had an impact on that skill and knowledge in my position, right? So it's like, if you're working with these people that have never worked on a computer and they wouldn't actually do anything till they'd figured out it worked. So you'd be sat there going, when are you going to start this drawing? And they're like, when I know it's right. And then all of a sudden, you now can start working out if it's right using AutoCAD, which means you can get pressure off project managers things and go, well, that looks good. Let's get that out. Let's do this. Let's do that.
Mm.
So the transition to digital changed the skill base and sort of eradicated some of it. And then the transition from 2D to 3D put a reliance to get that knowledge back that we'd sort of eradicated, but didn't change the program or the pressure or the ability to change. So you remember that changing something in 2D is quick and easy. Changing a 3D model can take 3 times longer, right? So people who don't do that role don't understand the time and effort.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of an about circle turn. And now we're here preaching that you've got to look and do this right because it takes a lot of effort if you get it wrong. So it's a very interesting situation of how it all goes around. But yeah,
the pendulum swing. It kind of, as when the AutoCAD came along and now we're digitizing this 2D drawing process. The pendulum swung too far. It became too cheap to get out drawings without thinking about the design, and now it's had to swing back, and we've gone back through that transition process of like, okay, no, let's slow it down. Let's get the design right, and to do that, you've got to work in your headspace a bit more.
Yeah, no, it was a massive transition. The 2D to 3D, the skill base of being able to view 2D to 3D and the growth of infrastructure. I mean, coming out of the recession in the 90s and coming out of the recession after, there's always a big push to be more efficient, quicker, faster, do this. So both important points in my career came after a recession. So, and I don't think anyone's lived through one for a long time in the world. So there'll be another one eventually, and there'll be another change and another thing, and technology will become more and more important. But that pendulum swing we still have to build buildings the same way. Fundamentally, construction of St. Paul's Cathedral to the Opera House to another building, to build something so beautiful and big takes time and effort and coordination and detail. And I know everyone thinks we can do things quicker, faster and better, but we all know that's not true. No one wants to admit. We've got lots of good projects, but the time and effort put into create them is immense. Everyone just has a comfort that the software makes everything quicker and easier. And what I love about what we can do now is, with the BIM and the technologies, you can get better visibility and more transparency quicker and easier to see and eradicate them problems before they become problems on site, or look at addressing them issues as you're doing them during design, rather than waiting for a submission and then comparing the mechanical drawing and overlaying it against an electrical one and sitting on front of a light box and going, oh, I think we've got a problem under this beam. So the knowledge to build doesn't change. The way we can anticipate and review that and react quicker is what I think we do with the BIM and the technologies.
Yeah, it's a great point. And certainly you've got this personal ethos around buildability and keeping some of that craft from the past, which I've experienced on projects that you've worked on. So that's an awesome skill to keep bringing to industry, mate, that your team is bringing.
Oh, I think the software, I was a big user of Navisworks, loved it, made so much easier. But relying on clash detection and having worked on a site cabin, drawing 2D drawings where people to install, if they can't install it, they come and look at you. Your drawing doesn't work. This isn't working. This is your fault. Fix it. So trying to make sure it's correct. And running a clash detection process, it can tell you how badly coordinated it is and where your points are. But to fix a clash, there's a whole series of things that you can't just look at them in isolation. You've got to look at the area, the surrounding area. What's the best ethos? and you'll have seen designs and RC designs where you can tell that they've just fixed everything in isolation, right? And you look at this, and this is where, when you're doing takeoffs and quantities, and you look at it and you're like, actually, there's a solution here where I can remove all these extra bends, all this extra meterage, all this, and make it coordinate because, and having worked in design, things do change it. So I know why it happens, but no one allows that time to sit back. And now the contractors get to do it, and they come back and they go, I'm not putting any bends in. I can do this. I can make this work. But they can actually now articulate the benefits and the why using the software. So looking at clash detection, I've got projects and problems where there is no clashes, but you can't install the valve because the pipe's too close to the wall, right? They've put a valve in, it looks like it fits, but you can't turn it. You can't install
physically put it in there. Yeah.
So it's coordinated, but if you can't build it or access that valve when you come to operate, the design to me fails, all right? And the rules and we'll probably touch on this later, but people keep asking about where's AI going to take construction? What can we do with the models? And I'm like, we can't even teach each other what we have to do, let alone a computer. So we're a far way away. And the code compliances in Australia, each state's got different things. You can do so many different solutions to make it build. It's going to have a big impact, but maybe not where people think.
True.
And I also love, we don't share information. So how do you teach one massive engine if no one's going to share information, model, data, where to go, what do we do?
Yeah, true. What about some challenges, mate, that you've faced along your career journey? You've done, come from UK over to here, plus you've gone from 2D to 3D. What are some of the key challenges you've faced along that journey?
Sometimes self-belief. Self-belief's hard, right? It's you get to points where you're in, have I done the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? I think the one self-belief I've always had is that I can, if I'm given time, I can fix the problem and I can work through it, and I don't do something that I don't believe. Whether I can do it in 5 minutes or 5 days is a difference, but I think we can achieve that. So having the confidence and overcoming them imposter syndromes and fears that, am I as good as I am? I left school with very few qualifications apart from what you would get at year 10 here. So they're hard. They come and fluctuate and come up and down, and people say nice things about you, which gives you confidence. But it's that perseverance to go, I've promised to do something. Can I do this? Can I do it? Moving here was an awesome experience. The challenge within industry, that 3D coordination was something that I'd been doing for a long time, and it was quite new here. The resistance wasn't over the output. The resistance was over the effort and the skill and the training. And not from within companies I worked, but just from industry in general. And I think one of the things that's worked really well for me is trying to show how simple and easy it can be. So I did a Navisworks presentation and lab at Built. Public speaking's, I'm probably very nervous, and I don't like doing it all the time, but I push myself to do it because it's overcome a fear. But to do this lab to show that you could automate and set up any project in any building by creating a template and do it within an hour, to me, it's so obvious. And I did this and I showed people, and they're like, oh, wow, that's so cool. And I'm like, sorry, it's just once you know the rules and the formula, you just got to make it so you can repeat and repeat and repeat. And once you get to that repeatability, I get bored with that. I'm looking for the next thing. What's the next thing I can solve and do that? So convincing people that was good, and then speaking to people in the industry that would build little apps that would help speed up them automated process. So challenges is the hard thing, because to me, I just live for the next challenge. So, but having the community that we sort of developed and fostered and grew within Australia to share knowledge, and having people that were similar problems and building different tools, sharing and giving away ideas and workflows just helped everyone get better quicker and helped you solve problems. So there was like the Revit user group. I walked into that and I met John and Toby and Wes and Tim Waldock. And I'm sat there as a services Revit user at the time, and they're all architects and structural engineers. And I'm sort of sat there going, all right, you really know how this software works. That's awesome. How does that work for this discipline? How does that work here? How does that work there? And it sort of was a pain in their ass, I think, for a few, asking all these questions. And I think I've been going for about 9 to 10 months. And I'm like, right, you haven't got any services on your committee. Can I get involved? And they just went, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't realise that the fact that they wanted to get involved, because it's so hard running a free event, the more people that help wanted. But I wanted more services knowledge. I wanted to share that and get other people to come in. So, again, timing, luck, whatever you call it. But I think, putting yourself out there to go, there's an issue, I want to help. It's going to help me. But the more people I talk to, the more people I share my ideas with, the more feedback you get. You can have an idea and sit there and keep it and think, I'm not telling anyone because I don't want them to steal it. But if you market test it with your friends, your peers, your colleagues, they'll give you feedback whether it's a good idea, whether they fixed something, whether they failed it. And I couldn't be more grateful for the people in the industry that we've come across and shared them. You guys have built software products that are there to help beat and challenge these projects, right? That you listen to the challenges we've had and you have solutions and you come up with ideas. So I think the biggest...
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point about the Aussie industry. It seems to be a bit more open to sharing than perhaps maybe US. And that's why we can kind of punch above our weight, I think, as a group, which is pretty cool.
The biggest challenge, I think, that we still haven't overcome is convincing people that there's value and a benefit for these processes. Now, one of the things I work for a lot of main contractors and builders because I like that environment. I feel really comfortable. It's where I'm comfortable. But I don't think if you have to do BIM management and deliver clients' BIM requirements, if they're not gaining any value for this process, then they're missing a trick. It's the only trade they hire that can actually make them manage and deliver these projects more efficient. Some of them are getting there. Some of them get it, but it's just too hard. Some clients are awesome and it just goes on every project, even if it's just basic coordination now. And some people just, look, we're not set up to do that, but if the project's got it, we need to deliver that requirement. So that's probably the
biggest. And I think, to me, some of that is because BIM is still seen as an add-on or something that's mandated, and they just haven't integrated it right into the center of their business. Yeah, would you agree?
Yeah. And again, change is hard, and you look, they've gone from we keep going through changes, and I think there's a fear in the industry that there's so much technology, there's so much appetite for increasing productivity to do this. Where do you step in? Where do you do? Margins are really tight. Market's really tight. Can we invest? And if it fails, have we wasted our investment? So I think there's just hesitancy, not a lack of wanting to. It's just a hesitancy of, well, what's going to be the next thing? There's this, there's that. And I think one of the things that if we, as an industry, we go back is that we're trying to solve a problem. There's a million different tools. They used to have manual sorts. We invented electric sorts. The tools are just getting better to make it more efficient. You can get to pick which tool you want to use. You just got to understand the problem you're solving. And I think that's where they're not looking at their problem that they're trying to solve. They're trying to fix what the client wants rather than what's theirs. Not everybody. There are some very good organisations out there that are focusing on doing this. But I think as an industry, we might be at 5% saturation, maybe 10%. And there's a long way to go.
And so David, what do you tell an organisation? Like, how do you motivate them? How do you guide them through if they're coming to you like, what do we do here, David?
So the first way you address it is, right, so generally they'll come to us when they've got a set of requirements on a project, right? So, and you build that relationship. So the first thing is our job is to make sure you meet and deliver them clients' requirements, right? That's we will do that. We take complete responsibility for everything, software, technical integration. That's ours. The primary goal from us is to educate you on how, not the details work, but what it should look like, what needs to happen, how this works well. All right. So I think probably 7 years ago, we would run BIM coordination meetings. We might not even have the builders in. It would just be the drafting team, the modelling team, where we go. And then as you start getting design managers in or construction managers, they start looking at, well, I'm actually going to build that slightly different. I'm going to start doing this. So getting visibility into it and understanding that they can impact and change. And look, it's all cost driven. It's a competitive market. You've got to bring a good fee. And then the feedback that we ask for the teams, right? I mean, to me, was that process easy? Did you get the benefit? And did the rest of the team get value out of the process? So not just the builder that I work for. Did the trades, did we make their life easy? Did it actually impact them and help them get their deliverables, right? We can sit there and just beat them up for not doing their job. But if you know there's a problem, the idea is to try and help them solve it, right? So the attitude of, we've got an issue, this needs to be resolved, you should be doing it, right? How do you, right? And if they're struggling, we're not liable for design and we can give guidance, but you can say, have a look at this, go look at this scenario. You've got to take responsibility, but I think this is an option. We can ask these people to relocate. We can ask, so it's a communication thing. Everyone gets they're very proud. They want to be right and they don't want to admit they're wrong. So just facilitating a healthy conversation where we've got to do this for the project, right? It's not an admission of failure. This doesn't work. Someone needs to move. We think you might be the best. You go away and look at it. So, and then getting people interacting in it. So the way you deliver and manage them meetings, software can do so much, and you could. But I think from our business perspective, the biggest challenge I have is that we can't be. If we just rely on the software, I probably don't have a business, right? So we need to make sure that our people and our team add value outside of the software and the processes. But what you asked about, how do you do this? You got to take the fear over the technology out. That's the first thing. And then make sure you bring value and direction in the meeting. So not sitting there in the first coordination meeting talking about a 10 mil pipe and a 300 mil cable tray clashing when you can't get the fire damper in the riser or you can't physically get the drainage out. So it's trying to focus on which issues are right at which time.
What's important now.
Yeah.
What are you most proud of in your career to date, mate? You've worked at a lot of big organisations and been a big part of the industry in Australia. What are you personally proud of?
I'm prepared for this. I'm still not sure. I think at the minute, my proudest achievement is the team and culture that we've created at IIMBE. I'm super
awesome.
Happy. I love going to work. I went back to the UK a couple of years ago and I spoke to my mum and she's like, how's it going? How's the business? And I'm like, and she says, you look so happy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm now sat there. My job is to teach and educate, right? I still like solving problems on difficult projects, but watching people grow, watching them interact. You talked about my formative years. The ethos was treating people how you would expect to be treated. So with the team, it's about, if I was in their position, how would I handle being treated like this? How do they deal with it? And getting them to take that into how they run their meetings and interact with clients. So that's probably my proudest thing at the minute, that what we've developed. Looking back at projects I've worked on, I've worked on the Buckingham Palace, I've worked on Harrods, I did Canary Wharf, we're on Atlassian here, done a project at the Opera House. So there's having nice landmark projects to go. I've been involved in. That is something I'll probably look back on later, and it's quite nice telling you my son and showing him around London when we did lots of work in London and similar in Sydney. But I think if you said what am I most proud about, it is definitely the team and culture that we've developed in the last 4 years.
Yeah, awesome. And what's one piece of advice that you would give someone who's perhaps thinking of working in this industry? What's one thing you'd tell them?
What, coming into it brand new?
Pretty much, yeah. Maybe they're in uni, maybe they just come out, of school.
No, this is really easy. One of the things, I did a guest lecture at UTS, and this will touch on where I came from the beginning, right? Is you come in, people want to climb the ladder so quick, right? Before you become a manager or a leader, you should have experienced every part of the project lifecycle. So, upfront design, construction, handover, delivery, transition into operations. You got to know the full lot if you want to lead. There's so many good people that have specialised in certain areas that don't understand the downside transition of what happens at certain points, that you can get stuck where you've got a problem on a project where your skill and experience is in one part, and you've now got a team of people looking after another. And how do you guide them through them challenging areas? So try, before you rise too hard, to get exposure to as many phases and stages in the industry, because they all have different challenges and all have different needs and requirements. And it doesn't matter whether it's a data center, a hospital, a school, a commercial office. So you start on a piece of paper with a piece of land, and it turns into something that's maintained and operated. And every stage has challenges and differences. And digitally, we're trying to pass information, consistent information through them all. So we're lucky we get to see them all. But if you're being an engineer or an architect or a project manager, don't let yourself get siloed too early in your career so you don't understand the broad spectrum, would be the best advice I could ever tell anyone.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I don't know if you agree with this, but you observed like some of the skills getting lost from, let's say hand drafting to CAD to BIM. I have started to observe that BIM people, some of them are just BIM people now, and they actually don't have the background in construction or industry. And I think it's a bit of a trend. What do you think?
No, it's massive. So I won't touch on people, but a lot of our senior people. This is something that's really good. A really good point is we've got a lot of ex-Revit users that have worked and know the software and lots of industry experience, right? So they're really good technology, but there's a lot more reporting and auditing and where we go. So we got people coming out of university that have never done a different job in the background, right? They are BIM people, but they're coming out with masters, right? I'm going to be honest, I don't know many Revit modelers authors that have ever gone through and got a master's. Some have got degrees, right? But they don't focus on writing reports, client engagement and stuff. That's not your career trajectory. So having a mix and a balance in a business and organisation, I think you need the young people that don't have the history of what the problems are, but you need the senior people to tell them and teach them. Right? So we've got a process that when we bring someone in and they're starting looking at their first coordination review, we have a checklist of 40 things, right? Look for these. These are so common. And then the question is, well, why am I looking at that? What problems does it cause? So when it comes up, they pick them up. We can give them, this is the cause, this is the impact, and when it's resolved, this goes away. So it is that education and transferring that knowledge. And the juniors that are coming out, they know there's efficiencies, but how do they go? And there's an economic balance, right? There's a lot of a Revit modeler is highly valued in an organisation that does a lot of production. Right? To pull them out into a BIM management role or to bring them into a senior role. Again, 10 years ago when there was not as many people doing it, they were the people that took that mantle. But you can't grow and build a business. And a lot of the contractors that we work, they take cadets, right? They come in and they run their class detection, they run their coordination, and they teach them. But it's having that balance of what to teach and what to do. And you touched on it. It's like making sure that even if we're not working with the builder, we can share our knowledge and workflows with these cadets in other businesses and where to go. Who do you reach out to and ring? And if you're in a massive organisation and there's only 6 of you and you're not reaching out to other companies, you just get locked in your own bubble of what you're doing and your problems and your processes. And I think that's probably more of a problem than the coming out and not having industry experience. It's quite inspired that there are people that are coming out and choosing this as a career path over civil engineering, over construction management and different things. And they've got the skills to move into them areas, and maybe they will once they figure out the technology and the digital stuff and where they go. But
it's when I think back to like the early Revit user group, we were all there to learn how to use this tool better. But what actually also played out was the fact that we've got lots of disciplines here all in the same room. And that like, I think what you're talking about, there's got to be empathy between different disciplines, because for any construction project, any building that's going up, it's a lot of people coming together to build it. Like there's lots of different services, there's different, systems, architectural systems, mechanical, all of this has to come together. And unless we have, a degree of empathy between the disciplines, we have to appreciate what each system or each discipline is doing here. We've got to have those skills. And so some of the, even the user groups and stuff like that you're talking about, part of it was, okay, we're going to do this together. And we've got to keep pushing that.
No, you're so right. So as I said at the beginning, I wanted to be an architect. I became a services engineer, and the fight between architects and service engineers is ongoing and always is. What I came to learn was that the architects, they work a design, the services follow, the services impact what the architect's done, and they have to change it, which means something changes, which means the services have to update. There's a cause and effect, right? It's not one person's problem or another. There's information that needs to be done, and sometimes it's not provided at the right time, which means work's done, abortive work's done, and where it goes, even now with new technologies. But an architect can't build a building without services, and services don't exist unless the architect does. So if we work together, and in the Revit user groups and with the technology, the idea was to learn to work and share together, which people would share information. But then you put them on a project, and there's a deadline for the architect to get a package of work out. He's relying on information from the engineer to make sure his risers may be the right size, the ceiling grid layouts are done, right? So he can't finish that till he gets that information. So the information flow is reliant on each other. And that's when it becomes adversarial intense. If someone's off sick or you're under-resourced, right, no one wants to tell the team, I'm going to screw you and let you down because this has happened. I actually think the right thing is, this is what's happened. We're not going to get you that information. Can we look at another area or another package while this happens? So, but commercial contracts and programs and deliverables, they're not always enticing us to work together. And I think that when we bring in the BIM methodologies, they go against that. You need to bring that back together, and you need to do that. So I think maybe the next biggest change and challenge will be contractual procurement and how that changes around what technologies do, and that's probably a few years away.
Yeah, like one of the earlier things you're saying is about how there's this push on us as an industry to be so efficient that we cut out things. And what you're talking about now is it is an iterative process, and we can't do anything. You can't shorten that up. And I like the analogy I like is when you open the bonnet of a car engine, it is crammed full. There's no gaps. And it's like, how did that get there? It had to be an iterative design process that it starts with this fuzzy thing. This is the shape of it, and it's going to have an engine, and it's got water, and it's got it's got steering over here. It's going to get to that very compact, precise design in the end. But there's a time period of an iterative design until you get there, and you can't do anything about that. You can't shorten that up, and you have to come together. You have to work it, and you have to keep working it until you get to there in the end.
I suppose you just reminded me of something. So when I was contracting around England, I ended up in Newcastle, and they build a lot of ships up there, right? Now, some of the best coordination draftsmen I work with came from the shipbuilding industry. it's like some of them are floating hotels, some of them are this, right? But to get that right, it's got to sink. So the effort and diligence to do that, and it's a tighter space than the building, and it moves. So the skills that we need exist in other industries, and they've been there a lot longer because they've been doing things. But you build a car, you build a ship. If you're building 30 of them, you can invest more time and effort in that iterative process to get it right. We build a new building every time. Yes, it looks different, but the building blocks and foundations of what goes in shouldn't change. But we seem to start from scratch a lot more than we should, right? And it's how do we get there? So working with some of the big data center corps, the food manufacturers, supermarkets, they've now got templated building designs, right? Because it's the same thing the world over, and it's here you go and make that fit on this piece of land, adjust it. Where do you go? Make it code compliance to your region, your geography, what's going on. So certain industries do. Commercial offices won't ever, hospitals won't. Schools have started trying to do a modern method of construction and kit of parts thing. And so people are looking at their next evolutions and jumps. But that iterative process, it still has to happen. There's still a cause and effect. There's still design rules that certain things won't go past a certain distance. You have constraints to your design. So, and you need to communicate them in a timely manner. And that's probably our biggest challenge in industry is communicating stuff in a timely manner that lets someone else do their job so it doesn't impact you and the project team down the track.
Yeah, good point. We all make mistakes, mate. Any particular mistakes you may or may not have made that you'd like to share for others to avoid?
It's quite yes. I talk about mistakes all the time to the team. I think learning from and making mistakes is the best way to progress. Put me on the spot. I've done a few. I get fee proposals wrong. I agree to scope that we probably shouldn't have done. I had a big problem in London on a project. We were measuring and drawing buzz ducts, and it was about £3,000 per piece and where they go. So any mistake is a very costly one. And I'd had a few. We were very lucky that the team I worked with had makeup joints, but I'd misread a measurement on one thing. All right, so everything was out. So that was a huge mistake.
That was drafting, yeah, like drafting that element.
But it was an expensive mistake because you're rushing, you misread it. It's quite funny. So I'd made a mistake on one project. I moved to a next, and you made sure that every dimension was off a grid line, not a wall. And I had this site foreman come up going, this doesn't work. And he made the same mistake I did on site, measuring from the wall rather than from the centre of the grid line. So mistakes are easy to make. How you respond and fix them is how people remember you. So I screwed up. I went back. I had to redesign half the area to use the pieces that we'd got to make the impact of the cost of that that as minimal as possible. Right, I could have just gone, it's tough, it's got to go, let's just fix it that way. But spending 2 or 3 days going back, seeing what we could do, how we could make that not a 20 grand blowout and just a 3 grand blowout. That's important. So owning up to things you make. So if you make
that's a good point.
Make a decision, own it, and if you have to fix it, and people will remember how you reacted when you addressed with that adversity and failure and responded.
Many years ago, I was drafting and I drafted a stairwell, and didn't account for the handrail clearance dimensions, and so this it gets built just a little bit too narrow, and you just have the sinking feeling. When you find someone finds out, and you get the sinking feeling. But like you say, the real thing is how do you react then? What can you do to fix it? How can you look at the egress paths and make this thing work? Whatever. But yeah.
And clients and teams will come back to you, even if you make a mistake, if you've responded well and reacted, because everyone makes them, and you'd rather have someone on your team that's willing to fix them and sort it out than someone that's not.
Yeah, very true.
David, I'm really curious about this question. You've been through a transition from the drawing board to CAD, and from CAD to this 3D CAD. What do you think, like coming up, you've already talked about AI. We are going to transition to AI. What have you learned that's going to help, or what are you going to suggest to people to how do we adopt new technologies going forward, and what are you looking out for?
I don't think we've solved where we're at the minute before we can move on to the next one. I think that how do we leverage the whole design production phase, right? What's the barriers? My belief is that producing a drawing sheet takes 40% of the effort of when you produce the model. So 60% is in the model, 40% is in the sheet. So the first question is can we have data-rich models where production of the sheets can be automated? Right? If you could AI the drawing sheet, and then you can focus more on the design and the coordination. Or just even now, forget that. Can we change the process that we're not reviewing drawings till this all fits in? Right. So the problem is clients, they don't look at models. They want to see a package of drawings submitted, gets paid. Might go to a peer review team. He wants a package of drawings to review. So the effort's on the drawings. And because it's an iterative process, where the architect is versus where the service and the structure, they're all at different stages. Even though they've got the same deadline, the impact of what they do means it's never quite coordinated. So if we could remove that and look at a model audit review, as in from a design perspective, not a BIM compliance, right? Where are we at? Where can we get clients engaged with looking at how do you sign off and approve a model? Where do we do? And then only when, and we're going to need drawing sheets for people on site. I don't ever believe that they will be completely eradicated. But if we could then go, right, we've done, here's a tool that's going to create your drawing sheet. The information for the duct size, the type, the system, the wall type, you just cut your views, it automatically texts it up and you spend half an hour looking at presentation. To me, there's a massive time-saving, cost-saving efficiency, right? Everyone likes to make sure their drawings, and it probably harks back to the drawing board, standards, prettiness, how they look, how they affect. As long as the information's right, the picture tells the words, right? It doesn't have, as long as it's clear and readable, you can see where the problems are. So I think that would, that's my, if we can get there, having data-rich models, then you can teach AI and you can write the rules of codes. I mean, you've got your fire and life safety codes. They have to be based on what the building does. So how do you teach AI to go, in this scenario, this is the rule, this is the rule. So airflow is easy, duct size, there's different things that are easy. And coordinating services, how do you know which one's best to move? Are you going to give it metrics and cost, where it works, where does it go? In the UK, pipework was by far the most expensive service to install from a labour and material cost. And ductwork was by far the second cheapest after cable tray. So the pipework guys would get priority over ductwork every day of the week. Here, the ductwork's so big because it's air conditioned, and again, UK, different climate, so smaller ducts, more heating pipework, but the priority of what takes the space versus the cost analysis, if you're running an AI coordination, I reckon would be very different to the way we act and behave.
Mm.
So that's the goal. If we can, and then you sort of, can the health authorities share enough experience around the world on building hospitals, right? This is the problems, this is the models, these are the data, how do we teach, right? That's, if AI is it's the machine learning bit, right? Is everyone willing to share their models and share their failings, share their issues? And I've worked at some big companies and we work with some big builders, and I'm not even sure that they're very good at sharing that information inside their own organizations to create their own machine learning based on their knowledge to get better yet. I reckon maybe by the end of this decade, that'll have all disappeared, right? That there will be we're going to share, we've got to get better. There's so much infrastructure and so much work to be done around the world as we keep developing, and not enough skills and knowledge and people, that once people get worried about them IP barriers and where we go, and sharing lessons learned and failings into a machine learning to go, actually, this is the best thing that you should look at, that'll be good. And I'm not huge on AI. Probably there's a lot more people with more knowledge. But what I found really interesting is, when you sign into these things and it asks you for crossroads, lights, bicycles, cars, you get them little puzzles. That's Google and Microsoft trying to teach their automated car. And I think we've been doing them for over 15 years, maybe a little bit less, and we still haven't got automated cars. And you got to think teaching a car to drive around the road is going to be easier than automating the design for a building. So that's when I look at it from that practical application there. I think you've got to share that insight.
I was going to ask you about, what the builder of the future kind of looks like, that, as they adapt to some of these new things like you've just been talking about. But I also want to know, you've worked across many different parts of this industry. So it's like from the consultants to the contractors, the general contractor. You've been very close to how they get things built on site. How do they all kind of meet the needs of this efficiency and the push on industry, like you said? But we've got to build the global infrastructure. It has this need for us to really pick up. They all need to respond a little bit differently, right?
They will. Look, I'm probably, as you said, more with the tech and the idea than physically on site. I'm not sure how you increase productivity on construction sites or where you go. I did do a little internal presentation somewhere, and I did a comparison to the Harbour Bridge. The stone columns, the excavation of the stone. That was done the same way it was done in Egypt when they did the pyramids. They didn't have to move them as far, but the stone excavation hadn't changed much in 4 or 5. Trying for me to tell people how to build things quicker and more efficiently on site, I'm not the right person. I think people are looking at it. I mean, they talk about robots as life safety. There's lots of little things, but we haven't changed much in 200 years on how we construct things. And all the focus, I think, at the minute, and right, is about managing that process, making sure they're not doing abortive works. Can we make sure they build it right the first time? Can we, right? If that's a 20% contingency on problem on a project, just removing that 20% puts us in a better place, probably gives people more profit to start looking at, well, actually, how do I actually get the bit I'm doing better? Right? But if you improve that and you still got to knock it down and rebuild it or take it out and remove it because it doesn't work, whatever efficiency you've got, you're going to potentially lose. So I think it's a massive challenge for managing contractors and builders to figure out how to do it.
I think actually what you've actually shared is that you need to have this attitude of solving problems, and you've done this, and I think that's what a lot of us. Maybe that's what you need to pass on, that advice to new and young and emerging people in this industry. You've got to continue solving problems. Don't just stick with the status quo. Don't just do things because we've always done it that way. You need to have this attitude that you've brought, which is like, okay, we're transitioning or we're moving to this new why because there's a problem, and how we're going to do it, I don't know yet. We're going to figure it out. And this is what we're going to do.
I like that, Michael. Thank you. So you just reminded me of something. When I was talking, I went back to the UK talking to my mother, and she says, "What do you do?" And I'm like, I look at processes and I hate repetition, and if we can get rid of it, we don't do this. She's like, as a child, you hated doing anything the long way. It was your drive was, I haven't got time to do this way.
I love it.
I would do my mathematical quadratic equations and fractions, and you're supposed to do it in 10 steps, and I would do it in 3. My answer would be right, and they're like, no, we want to see it all. I'm like, it's right. Isn't the goal to get to the outcome quicker than any other way? So if waste and efficiency, I don't want to waste my life working overtime all the time. And I love what I do in the industry, but I want to be able to go home at 5 and spend and enjoy my time. I wanted to leave school and go home and enjoy my life. And the industry's hard, and a lot of people do put in a lot of hours and work. And even if we just save people's mentality and then profitability, and that, right? So the first thing is if I'm looking at a task and I've got to do this, even I used to have to put a little L1 next to 300 lights, right? Do you know what I mean? It's like, how can I do this once? I'm not going to walk around and hit them. So I learned how to write little routines because I'm like, I'm not wasting my time. I get paid by the hour, right? I could sit and spend 5 hours, but they're going to go, is that all you've done? Whereas it's like, right, I've done this. So then just that, if you're doing a task often enough and it's repetitive, surely you can think of a quicker way, firstly to help you and then share that with someone else, right? Most people still struggle with, no one's ever skilled or taught in how to use Excel well or Word, and sitting in engineering companies and that, you sit watching these people struggle with simple functions in documents because they don't know any better. And it's like, I've got an 18-year-old son, it's like, they just Google the answer. Just Google, how do I do this? It takes 5 minutes to Google it, 5 minutes to watch. And you've just saved yourself some grief and angst. And I think people just need to start looking at it for their own benefit. Is there's got to be a better way to do this, first and foremost, right? The outcome can't change. You've still got to give everyone the outcome, but I've got to fill this. You look at some of the cool things that have happened, site signing in now, it's all automated, tracked and done. You used to have to write your pen and name. So there's technologies that have come that have gone, this is a stupid process. It's taking hard. We can't manage it well. Implement the software. Someone actually sat there and went, I'm going to build this solution because this is done. Right? But in everyone's day-to-day life, there's dumb things we all do every day. And I still have them. And I probably don't have the capacity to sort of figure out what I need to do that at the minute. But then the answer is, well, why am I doing it? Should I be doing that role or task? So that's where I'm at the minute. But I still like being involved in projects. And I still think that when people hire IIMBE and our team, they want us involved when it's needed. I don't have to do the day-to-day delivery. But that industry skill and knowledge that you can sit and bring and just pop in here and there is why they hire businesses. That's...
Yeah, that's right. We've talked a bit about AI, but what does the concept of data mean to you? Like that's evolved over the years from files and drawings into something more.
Oh, look, I think, at talking about that whole workflow, what information do the guys need at the end to operate it, right? So everyone's looking at asset information, where does it go, right? So I was lucky enough to be involved in procurement, and I've been in estimating. So if you design, and I'll use building services analogies because I'm stronger with that, but if you're designing an AC system, you know what plant and equipment you're basing your design on. When you start in the movement, you know which ones you're going to buy. You have the model numbers there and then. You're going to order them. You probably get some serial numbers when you put that through, right? Why don't you develop your workflow that as you pass through the gates for your own business, you can populate the client's asset requirements as you go. This has been ordered. I know what it is. Has it been installed in the right spot? Can we? So people look at data of, I just have to put it here for you. I have to put it here for you. To me, we're not asking for data that doesn't already benefit the process. It's not already hidden somewhere that's not being done. But if you're checking, have I ordered everything? Have I installed everything? What are them workflows? So the data should not just be important to the client, because if it's only important to the client, you're not going to do it right. It should be something that helps you build, design, commission, and hand over your scope to your client, right? And that they want that information to be as accurate as possible. Are you ever going to get 100% accurate? No, right? If you can get 90, 95, it's fine. And clients will find out problems in 12 months' time. But if they're only finding one or two things, they'll be fine. They'll be able to figure it out. If they're looking at 30 or 40, they lose faith in everything they've got. And that's where it becomes challenging. So, as built documentation, does it have to be laser scanned and millimeter accurate? I don't see any value in doing that unless there's a certain need for the client at a certain point. So certain warehouses are going to have racking installed. So we might scan it to make sure everything's out of the clearance zone, right? But if it's above the clearance zone and it's 100 mil to the left or 100 mil to the right, does it impact the operation of the building? What does it? So being practical about what we've got to do to design and build and then hand over the client. There's so much data and white noise, right? And that is so easily efficient in our personal lives. We've got Google, right? That search engine is awesome. You don't have that for construction. You don't have the ability to search and find. So to try and get a little bit of consistency, you got to try and build some structure. The government departments are all trying to work around that structure and where we go for consistency. But the cat's out of the bag now. Everyone creates data and models their own way. So it's trying to select and identify the pieces that are critical through that process to be tracked and validated and get handed over. So it'll play a big part. I think the data workflow will actually impact some of the design processes when people pick up on the impact of not having the right information at schematic or detailed design to when we go to build, and it'll change, right? So I think that when people start realizing the value to what their service is of having good data, they'll start collecting it for their own benefit, and then we'll get better at it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. As we sort of head towards wrapping up, Dave, we've got a quick fire round of questions. Some of them are a bit silly, but firstly, we've got a tool selection. So you've gone out to the garden shed and you've got the choice of a hammer, a screwdriver, or duct tape. What are you going for?
Oh, duct tape. I've told you, I'm not a builder, I'm a fixer. So
you can fix a lot with duct tape. And a material selection here, concrete, steel, or timber?
I like them all together combined, but timber, that would be, if I had to only pick one, timber.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like it. Popular choice. And I've got maybe another question that I'd like to ask you, and it might be related to, I don't know, maybe it's nostalgia, but digital or traditional? You see the pros and cons of both, I'm sure, and you've got.
I'll go digital. I'll digital because it allows more efficiency.
Yeah, we can copy that L1 tag round to all the light.
I think due to the efficiencies and as you picked up, I learned AutoCAD on DOS and scripting and stuff on DOS. And when Microsoft Windows came out, it threw me out. I didn't like it. It's like, don't change this. Don't change it. I've just spent 3 years developing and learning this. So I stopped coding after that and just used what I got and just little tips and tricks. But yeah, so digital is if you want efficiencies, it's the easiest and quickest way to gain them.
Yeah, and future tech-wise, is there any either future or maybe some current hardware technology that you've got your hands on that you're a bit of a favourite at the moment?
No, I suppose I'm looking at things at the minute that to revolve around expanding the tech. So I'm not a big VR fan. Maybe it's generational. I don't like being in a headset.
This is a Hollywood BIM thing, isn't it? Is it really useful? Is the question. Mm.
Oh, look, you see the certain applications. How useful is it going to be in construction? How safe is it to use? I think people on site will get better at using it to see what they should be installing and what's coming up. So if there's a big space and someone sticks their service in the wrong spot, and maybe they can get the thing to check and go, actually, there's going to be other things there I can move. I think that might add some value, but it'll take a while. And that then they need to trust the model, so you can't move to that. But I think the quality compliance. So we're working with Cupix. There is other softwares out there that do this, but I think if you can get with that capture to start looking at defects, quality, safety issues, right, and get the AI learning what's a defect, what's not installed correctly, what's a safety hazard. So when someone walks around with a camera every week, you automatically get a report that says these are all the issues you're going to get on your site. So I think AI in that photogrammetry world and training, and I think OpenSpace are looking at progress reports on built versus what's in the model and different things. So I think that's going to be real. And there's another one, drone deploy. So I'll name as many as I can, so I'm not being biased. But I think there is a massive benefit going forward into that service and where we go. Again, clients don't require it. Builders, they'll get the most benefit if they can figure out how to use it well and where it goes. So it's a step change. To me, it's just an additional benefit to what we do and where we go. And then there is that that whole process of capturing information earlier. So we're talking to a couple of software developers that I think have got really exciting products, and I'm not going to name them yet till we start going through that. I think can help some of them efficiency workflows implement them. I just need to find the right client and right project to work and test it. So find something small and nimble, and let's put some R&D in and go, is this going to work and does it roll out? So I'm excited about that. There's plenty of little options out there that can get some of them efficiency and reliability. And just to finish on that, if them processes work, having reliable data will become more of a requirement during the project rather than at the end. So hopefully that
consistency,
not the one you wanted.
Well, David, we might wrap up there, but thank you so much for sharing, everything, all your journey and all you've shared with us today. It's been really good. You've given us a lot of insight into who you are and the track you've been on. So it's been really good and great to listen to.
Well, look, thank you. It's been an honour and a pleasure. Thank you for asking me. I'm quite humbled at the time. Hopefully people find it interesting. And yeah, look, if anyone listens to the pod and wants to reach out via Luke or Michael or to me, I'm always happy to chat.
Yeah, awesome. You've been able to, we've been across paths a lot in the industry and a lot of the user groups, and you've been able to share a lot along the way with a lot of the community. So that's been really cool.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks for all of the things you've done. And I'm sure we'll keep doing in the industry.
Yeah, and good luck and well done for doing this and bringing people's stories. It's going to be interesting.